particular session was to think about, what are some new things or areas that you're working on in engineering education, and maybe if there's a resource that might be helpful for our, out of school time professionals to share, because they are absolutely on the cutting edge of this work and constantly finding amazing new things and pushing through ideas. And so I will defer to Merredith and Elissa to introduce the topic they came up with and to introduce themselves a little further if you'd like to talk about sort of how you got to this point of this work. I don't want to spoil it. So it's all yours, Merredith and Elissa.
All right. I think I'm unmuted. Do you see pretty slides?
And just a shout out to Slippery Rock. I lived there when I was little, so Lorraine, I'm familiar.
We apparently know Lorraine really well. She's done work that one of our favorite colleagues, Jen, has done, Arts and Bots. Yeah, it was amazing to hear everything everybody did. You all are doing such amazing work with kids in out of school programs that it's so exciting to hear and learn from you all. So that's why I've enjoyed being part of this community, and it was like, Elissa, you have to come meet all these folks. So we're going to talk today about engineering notebooking. In the spirit of learning both ways, we are going to talk a little bit about what we've done and what we've been seeing, and then want to leave lots of space for folks to discuss ideas for thinking about this in your setting. And we work in classrooms, we work in out of school situations, we run our own summer programs, we support districts doing after school programming. So we definitely are familiar with all the different affordances and constraints of different spaces, as well as Elissa's been doing some really interesting work that I'll let her talk about. So you already heard, I'm really interested in taking research and turning it into practice. So I'm officially a faculty member here. But a lot of my work has been trying to say, like, once we know more about how children learn, what resources best support teacher, how do we turn that into things that are actually useful? And Elissa has been doing amazing work as well, and only a bit of it's here. So I'll let her say more about herself and her passions.
And so the center, if you're not familiar, I'm sure you've talked about the center, how we have our research and our outreach really work together. So if I see something in a classroom, then I can say, hey, Merredith, researcher, let's talk about the list a little bit and see it. So one of the programs I run is called Novel Engineering, which has been around we started research on it probably about 14 years ago. I should know that exact date, as a National Science Foundation grant. And that takes books that teachers are using in the classroom and using them as the context for engineering design problems. So the kids go into them, figure out what problems the characters are having, how they're going to solve it, and they make they physically make something to solve that problem and go through the whole design process. They do it, but at the same time, they're also really deep diving into that book so they understand it a lot better, as well as working on some social emotional skills.
Do you want to say just one more sentence about your pilot that you did this year in Winter Hill? Because I thought that work was really interesting.
So this year, as I said, I was a special education teacher, so I always have my eye trying to figure out how we can get different kids involved. So this year we were lucky enough to partner with one of our local schools that has an autism program for K through 8. And we worked in two of the middle school classrooms trying to bring engineering to them. So we had 3 undergraduate engineering students who worked with them through the entire year once a week. And they really got to know them. They got to bring things that we're doing with other classrooms and try and work with the teachers to really make changes so that it would work for the kids in there, so they got that engineering experience. It was really exciting because the teachers said otherwise their kids would not have those experiences, and they were just so excited, especially when we brought the Lego robotics in.
Yes, as you guys were listing all your materials, we do lots of stuff with found materials, but we definitely have a soft spot for Lego. Today, what we're going to talk about, though, is not about the actual things students are building with, but what are the pieces that we put around what students are doing that support our goals. So we're going to talk about engineering notebooks or notebooking. And when we talk about notebooking, we use the term really broadly because, right, a notebook can be a lot of different kinds of things, but we think about it as ways of documenting and communicating in engineering learning settings. And we did not come up with notebooking. There's been lots of research in science and in other disciplines that show that this kind of reflection and synthesis supports a lot of different goals in STEM. And notebooks can be physical, they can be digital, they can be all kinds of things. And we can brainstorm, but to frame what we're going to do today, a lot of our work in the outreach space is not only about supporting classroom learning, but also helping students realize that engineering can be a possible future. We talk about being doorstops, right? That, while, in fourth grade and fifth grade, we're not necessarily setting anyone's career trajectory, but we want to make sure that no doors are closing. And so by all kinds of different ways, we can think about doing that. And we draw on a lot of other research in the field that says there's kind of three things that have to happen for students to think about engineering as a possible future and to persist. One is engineering interesting to me? Does it connect to me? Do I find it compelling? And as you all were talking about all the different work you do, I heard lots of ways, right, in the materials or the topic connects to what students believe in. So it's something I think, especially in the out-of-school space, people believe deeply in. The other is recognition. Are students feeling recognized as engineers? Do their teachers, peers view that what they're doing is engineering? And that's a little tricky because students have come in with all kinds of pieces for that. So we'll talk about that a little more. And then the third piece is the kind of performance competence. Am I successful? Am I capable? So I could have great performance competence, but if I don't find it interesting or I don't feel like people are viewing me as an engineer, I'm not necessarily going to see this as a possible future. So we think about all three of those things together. And one way we've been addressing some of these pieces is through notebooking. So do you want to talk a little bit more here, Elissa?
Absolutely. So here we have a picture of an actual notebook from an elementary school student. So one of the things we're looking at is how do we connect the students to STEM students and educators. So how we want them to feel like this is something they can do, as Merredith said, and make connections to their interests as well. So this is the first page of one of the notebooks that we had. As I said, sometimes we have undergraduate students go into classrooms. So this is a communication between one of the elementary school students and one of our undergraduates. So here the prompt is just like, what's your favorite food? What do you like to do? Tell me a little bit more about yourself. And so the students wrote in the notebook, and then the undergrads took them home. As you can see at the bottom there, Alex, one of the undergrads, says, "Awesome, thank you, Alex." And then me too, just trying to start establishing some connections so they get to know each other. And then on the next slide here, we can see that Hannah, who is another undergraduate in this classroom, wrote back so that, she wrote this and then pasted into each of the notebooks. So it goes the other way, that we want those undergrads also to be connected to the students and learn about them. The students are the elementary school students are really going to know that the undergraduates care about them as a person beyond their engineering. So here's just a little story that Hannah wrote, and then she gave some of her interests. And she's talking a little bit about, her siblings and her favorite color, things like that. So you start to establish dialogue and the trust back and forth.
And if you all have any questions, please interrupt or type in the chat.
So of course, we're looking at engineering. So we want some engineering feedback. We want feedback on what they're doing that goes beyond just, does your prototype work or not? We want the students to start thinking about what they want to share and communicate about their designs. And then we want to make sure there's a space for the undergraduate students or the teacher, whoever's talking to them, to give that feedback. So you can see and the first one on the left, they're adding popsicle sticks to the design. They talk a little bit more about that. And then the undergraduate, says, great explanation. We're really getting them to think like, hey, you talked about it, and I really appreciate the way you talked about it. On the right-hand side, again, they're making a prediction. They're going to add foil, and then they're talking about what they think is going to happen when that foil has been added. And the undergraduates, you can see in the boxes, are saying, nice sketch. Right here, it's not just about their ideas, the text, but also about those drawings is another way to communicate, and showing them that, that is also very important, that you can talk about that. So those are some pulleys.
Yeah, I'm going to interject one thing. We started working with our undergraduates on this after we interviewed lots of 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students. And we said, "Are you good at engineering?" And they're like, "No, my thing never works." And we realized that a lot of the feedback they were getting was just whether their prototype worked or not. And we're like, wow, we really need to figure out more ways to tell them that, one, there's more than engineering than just the widget or prototype at the end. And also, like, where are we giving them feedback on those other pieces and processes?
And so before you switch, just want to say that the elementary school students would fill these out. And then the undergraduates would take them, they would meet them once a week. So, if you were a teacher in the classroom doing this, you don't necessarily need to do it right away. It's just a nice way later to go back and add some thought to what the students are doing and then bring it back. So as Merredith said that there are different ways. This is actually, it's called Design Keeper. And this was, we would do this virtually on an iPad. So the students would document the work that they were doing so that the different categories that they were sort of in these colors, they're testing, they're writing down their ideas, they're doing some problem scoping. So each of these different behaviors has a different color. I guess you can call it like a card. I forget the actual word they use, but it's creating a record of what they're doing. So they can also go back and look at it. If they're making changes, they can go back and say, I tested it this time. Let's see what went well, what didn't go well. So it's getting them not only to record about that, but really think about what happened and what they want to take from that and what changes they want to make. And I think we have a link for Design Keeper so they can see a little bit more of that.
We've actually, the folks who made this, it was an app, but it only works on iPad. So they've also made a Google slide version that we can share with the Click to Engineering team to share out. The other thing they talked about a lot with this work is, right, like now, in addition to having your physical prototype, you have this record, right? So you have another thing that represents the engineering you did and that you can also talk about, like, okay, let's look at our process together. So it's just another way of raising up those practices that we care about.
And then, of course, recognizing the great work that the students are doing, the words they're writing, the drawings they're making, all their great ideas. It's just another way, you can verbally tell them, they get the feedback from the other students in the class, but here they have this record where they can go back and look at it later and be like, Hannah said I did a really great job, that I was really engineering here. So it helps, some of the things that Merredith was talking about in the beginning, as far as them making connections, them enjoying themselves and really getting some good feedback for themselves.
Yeah, and so those are a few that we've done, and we've been talking about more, and we've done some of these. I don't have as many pretty examples, but thinking about notebooking as supporting reflection, right? What was one thing that didn't work today? We've also talked about notebooking supporting group work, right? Like, hey, you and your partner are working today. Well, what went well, what didn't? Supporting executive functioning, like what's the first thing you need to do next time you get here? So helping students organize, as well as helping them process, right? So before they have a share out with a group, could a notebook be a space for them to write down 2 ideas and have time to think about them before they get into a situation where they're verbally discussing something. So thinking about all those kinds of affordances.
And also, just you want to share, hold up, you didn't share the notebooks. We have a couple, these are just a couple versions. So we have, this is the one we took into some classrooms. And then we have these new pretty ones this summer that we're giving to our students who come in. So, they're little, but they're a nice little record. And so what we're going to play around with this summer is having stickers, understanding that not all students need the same prompts, and some students maybe need different executive functioning, students may be on different reading levels. The idea, as you can see at the top in the picture, they're just stickers that you have a bunch of them. When you come to a new activity, you can sort of customize a little bit based on students' needs in the group, and it also keeps it very flexible. So if they're midway through a page and you're ready to start the next thing, you can just put the next sticker there. So really, I like this for the executive functioning piece, especially if some kids need more prompts, they need more support through the engineering design process. Their sticker can look different than a student who, can just draw out their ideas, or maybe that's their strength of drawing versus verbally writing it out or writing it out in text. So it really allows a lot of flexibility, both for the teacher and the students, giving them multiple ways to express themselves.
Yeah, so that's where we are. That's some of the things we've been working on. We thought we could use, and Becky, maybe you want to clarify how much time we have. A little discussion about prompts, about what other things this group has done, or what other ideas this group has for ways to use notebooking that might be useful.
We love the ideas too, just because hopefully incorporate some.
Well, I think we've got at least 10 minutes here, probably 15, Sandra. Does that sound good? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, and actually I'm gonna just jump in and ask you some questions that I had in the middle of this, because notebooking is something that I used to teach an after-school class for funsies back when I was in grad school, because I missed teaching. And I started doing this kind of thing without long before I worked for the CEO. I used to work for them too. Just after I finished grad school. So I got to hang out with these amazing folks. So one of the questions I had about notebooking, and I'm totally picking your brains here, is, I'm curious, you said that you sort of started doing this as a result of, noticing that kids weren't feeling like they were getting a lot of positive feedback. They were only just doing their things didn't work. Did you also talk to kids? I assume you talked to kids after these notebooks. You started adding these like really great comments in notebooks, and I'm curious, like, what the kids started saying about, like, did you see some increased identity around engineering at that point?
We don't have really formal data on that. We do have some anecdotes of kids where the kids knew more about. One of the things in that project, right, we were studying is the outreach facilitators, right? We have these awesome undergrads, they're 20 something, they go in, they do engineering with the kids once a week, more in an informal out of school type environment. And they started to know, like, instead of being like, I don't know, we do engineering on Wednesday, they would say like, oh yeah, Hannah and Finn come in and they do this stuff with us. And we're like, can you tell us anything about Finn? So we started to see some of that connection of them, recognizing who these folks were. Because definitely in our setting, right, our outreach folks go in, 8 or 10 times a semester. So, maybe 15 to 16 times a year. Which actually isn't, right, we all know this, it's not that much time in an elementary kid's life to actually be able to be like, oh, this is a person and I value their opinion, and I know who they are, and I know that they're an engineer that's telling me I'm good at what I do. So that's a lot of some of the early change we saw around it.
And I would say it was bi-directional. The undergrads who went in also said they felt more connected to the students because they knew more about them. They had an easier time remembering their names. So I think it really helped foster a community in the classroom. If Finn was going to give me a suggestion, I'm really going to listen to a little bit more because, I know Finn knows my name, and he said that he also has a sibling or likes the color blue or something. So they made those connections as well.
And I'm going to say, I see Joanna nodding her head here because she also works with engineering ambassadors, right? Yeah, she's like, yeah, I'm listening. I can see you nodding your head.
Actually,
one of my other, go ahead, Joanna, please.
Yeah, I was going to say about that. So we just had some training yesterday for our staff, and we were talking about making connections, but for a variety of reasons, not just so they remember you, but also, as we're going in and we're having conversations with them, and if there are any type of critical conversations, that they're in a better place as well. So bringing in that social emotional piece that you were talking about, that maybe it's being piloted. So that is one of the reasons that we have as well, to make those connections early on with our kids to establish that trust. So whether they're working on a project and they trust you, or you're having a conversation about something else and there's some trust established there. So
Good point. Definitely. And it was just like not what you were saying, but there's just another touch point with the journals.
Yeah.
You've said it in classroom, but then here's another, I can open it up and see it. Just the more time, the better.
I like the idea of the feedback too, because one of the challenges in after school time is kids are not really motivated sometimes to write or record their ideas in the journal. And if they see that somebody else is investing their time in my journal, I think that makes a difference too, that time seems more well spent if somebody's actually taking the effort to read and respond to what they put in their journal. Absolutely. I think that makes a big difference in how they feel valued.
Yeah.
Sandra, I think that's a super awesome point, because a lot of our after school programs are very resistant to journaling, but the journaling is such an improvement, even if it's just a half a page. How did this activity go? What do you think you could do better? What was your favorite part of the activity? What did you learn? What would you do next time? All those prompts that you have. But to have the feedback and not feel like it's a school assignment kind of a thing. And also that's a great way to mentor the younger kids, to make them see themselves as future engineers or scientists. But it is a piece that we're constantly battling. It's like, please just do this half page. This is not going to take too long. Or to have just a basic spiral notebook where they can reflect their thoughts of, what they're learning. Kids are so attached to devices nowadays, just to have the process of them writing something is challenging. So I love that idea of the iPad app. I'm going to totally look into that one, because we do have some other Android devices, but I'm sure there's an app for that one too. Anyway, thank you.
And as you know, they love to take pictures of what they made.
Oh, they have to have the pictures for sure. That's how they express themselves these days.
And I think that's
One
why
of
we
the-
started out, Lorraine, with the fun things, like let's learn about each other, because that felt less like structured, right? Yeah, because we have been there, right? That in the out of school time, right? That writing, those worksheets, those kind of
Yeah.
structures are not well received. And I hear you kids. That's not what this is, a different space than school. So we're trying to figure out how to balance that.
And if you don't know.
I
you
have-
feel that
I have
you
a
don't
couple questions.
Sorry, go ahead, Lorraine.
I just have a couple things I was going to say whenever you're. Two things. We started also a Lego Robotics Club, and we put it out there on Facebook. Did anybody have kids that love Legos? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That love Legos and that maybe don't have anything else going on. And we got like kids from a 50-mile radius that didn't know each other. So we started this Lego Robotics Club with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And a few of them were ones that I took up to about 6th grade with block coding. And that's as far as I can go as an elementary teacher. But my husband is an engineer with Westinghouse Nuclear. And so he has all those experiences. So we brought in, he came in, and we got another parent that does engineering. But one of the things when your journaling reminds me of is we kept telling these kids, like the kits that you compete with, the First Inspires, they release them all to the public in August, and everybody starts competing in September or October. Well, we bought the kit as a class kit, and we did it over about 9 months, and we had a showcase in-house for that. So the kids kind of learned what that's going to look like when they compete now in the fall. But my husband kept telling them that before they could move on to the next challenge, they had to write down what they did on this one. So because they have to be able to repeat it, because all those things are going to be part of the competition, and you're going to need to be able to swap your robots back to that particular competition. Well, they showed them their notes every time. And when we got to the showcase, they had 2 weeks that we did scrimmages. Like, I can't understand my writing. Wait a minute, I didn't write down what it was. And they learned so much. They were panicking, but having it documented to my husband and the guy that also is an engineer was so important. And they've learned that that's important. They're not going to remember what they did in task number 1 and task number 2. The other thing I was going to say is, in all the classes that I teach, everything's about growth mindset. It's not really about the tech. It's about growth mindset and the engineering design process, and being able to be resilient and things. But one of the things we do is celebrate our mistakes. And somebody makes a mistake, whether it's robotics or engineering, whatever, they're like, I got to share this. And I'll say, oh, or they'll be a little shy. So can you share that? So we make a big deal about how much we love it. And then we'll say, what was it? Oh, we didn't have the battery turned on, or we had the wires reversed. And it gives those kids all those different troubleshooting things they're sharing with their friends that they might not have to experience themselves. So in those notebooks, you're talking about stickers and things like that, celebrating the put big funny stickers or something on the mistakes, because the mistakes are the best part. Those are what you're going to remember. And if you share them with the other people in the group and you're all enjoying them and laughing about them, you realize how this is what engineers do. I always say engineers aren't crybabies. We don't worry about it. We just move on. So those are two things that your presentation has kind of made me think about when it comes to writing it down and celebrating.
And I also, the other thing is, this probably takes more time than not doing it for an adult to do this. But I think that what we saw is the people who were doing it, the adults, were saying that they really got a lot out of it as well. And they felt it was, even though it took time, it was a good investment. And then I see Becky's question. So adjustments based on second language learners or neurodivergent kids. I think that's, for me, when I was thinking about the stickers, that was part of it. That not everybody would necessarily have to get the same sticker. I'm thinking of kids, even just having you put the sticker in there versus kids copy it from the board. If you have kids who have fine motor issues or writing is difficult for them, that takes that away. And then, your stickers can be in another language. They can be in 2 languages. If you have a kid who has executive functioning issues, you can chunk the stickers. So you're chunking the work for them. You can have a checklist. Those are really, I see those as a way to really make things individualized based on, the kid. So you might have like a variety of different kinds, and not every kid's getting the same sticker. So I think the alterations you do really depend on the child.
Does
Thanks.
anybody else have questions? Do we move on to the discussion prompts? Because we haven't quite gotten to those yet.
Oh yeah, we still haven't, huh?
You guys are in charge of the clock, so all up to you.
We were gonna go into breakout rooms, but we're having such a rich discussion with everybody together. I kind of would rather stay together as a small group, but I loved the idea that Elissa had about prompts, but does anybody have suggestions on what you would put in the prompts? What are the ideas that you would use?
Yeah, and I think capturing, if I was just capturing, I definitely want to capture Lorraine's one, right? Like I need to redo this. So like a documentation prompt is one that we didn't share today. So that's a great idea for saying like that. And the other one I heard Lorraine say was the mistake prompt, like call out, we don't call them mistakes, right? Because you couldn't have foreseen it, it's learning. Right, we need a good word for it. But I love that idea. And I think you highlighted it too, Sandra, of like giving you a like, you learned today sticker or whatever it was to recognize like an iterative failure that you had to work back from.
You know, it's funny when you said stickers, I literally had like, I don't know, kids, like I didn't know you meant words on the stickers. I literally thought you meant like,
I'm thinking
no.
name tags that you print on.
Yeah.
Or like
No, I'm so excited to do that. But also I was like, I actually wondered, I went to this like wondering of like, oh, but I feel like those kind of, I had like super, right, the little like kapow, blam, like those kind of stickers in my head. I was like, but those would be fun to put in the books too as a response. Right. And I think that kind of speaks to Lorraine's like celebrating feel. Like I am positive that I have stickers lying around my house somewhere that would be like, oh, that'd be so fun to put next to a kid's like, oh, this didn't work. But you'd be like, so cool, right? You know, I don't know. Especially in an out of school context, when we sort of like to add a little flair, for lack of a better word, that might be kind of a fun addition. And I could see the undergraduates liking it as well. Just that they can do that as well, in addition to like writing things too. So I just wanted to sort of say that little nugget of an idea out there as well.
I could really see that, like every time you put something that didn't work in your journal, the feedback you get is a fun, colorful sticker. You're going to get more ideas about what didn't work going into that journal.
I could even see kids,
I imagine like fireworks.
like look, I tried 3 different times, just to sort of show people like being excited about it, depending on the age.
I was imagining an oops sticker.
Yeah, I did. That was my first one too. I was like, but it's like, then I was like, oh, but is it really like an ooh? I mean, yes, but I don't know. But then I like went down to like, is that a mistake then? No,
Right.
anyway, I went down a whole like wormhole of ideas there. So
Well, it made me think too, we're doing a paper journal, so we don't have a digital journal this summer. And it is somewhat still school-like, more so than I would like, but we're working through that process with our partner. But I love the idea of even just have engineering design process stickers, so they could label the parts in their notebook when they see it. So reinforcing what they're learning about the engineering design process. So like, oh, this is the testing, I was testing here, or, you know, this was our problem. So just kind of, and having them be fun, because like you said, I think they like to add stickers.
All right, clearly one of us is going to make a sticker set, put it up on Etsy. It's going to be great.
just saying, I would buy those. I don't want to make them, but I would buy those. We need a graphic designer person.
Honestly, who doesn't love stickers? I mean, I'm old enough to remember having scratch and sniff stickers when I was a kid. And like, I don't use them as much as I want to use them, but I think that, yes, collectively, I would be purchasing all the stickers and, you know, sharing them probably at my own cost. But there's a really neat company too that does professional ones. They're very expensive, but we could also print these on our computer. You know, they could be printed and in color at, you know, Office Depot or your office supply stores too. So
Stamps
what a
you
cool
can use
idea.
too.
I never even thought about stickers. Gosh, that's
I mean,
what's so
this
great
sounds like a
about
great
this
task for
group.
undergraduates. I'm just saying, undergrads.
That
Yeah,
was
we have-
really
we have
what
a
I did
task
to me in my
force.
master's program.
Okay,
I
we'll
need more
cover that.
stickers on those papers.
Free open source stickers for engineering.
I'm really excited about summer. Yeah, we
I
should
love
definitely make the little ones the kids can do and like just the fun ones.
I think it's a nice takeaway too, right? Like, you know, we have pictures and stuff of their experience, but like, it feels like it's a good conversation piece. We haven't studied this out, like for families too, like at the end of your experience, you can actually show like, oh, I did this and that, and wow, and these people are writing back to my kids and telling them they're great engineers. It feels like it could have a lot of other purposes too.
I was gonna say that badging seems to be gonna maybe take her over grades if we're lucky over the next few years with teachers, and this would be much easier to show parents why this child got this badge because they did this, and you could see all the different processes they could do. Because I know as soon as they say we're not gonna have grades anymore, parents just freak out because they're used to saying your kid got an A, my kid got a B. They're able to do that. But there's a lot of really good research to support badging kids because they get to pick their projects. And of course, engineering is a lot of those projects, anything you can do that way. So I think that would give you a lot to anecdotal records that the kids would take in themselves, that you're going to be able to go over and look and say, you can see the whole identity. What I'm looking for is the engineering design process. I see that. Being able to accept failure, whatever, see that. So you can have a lot of different things. And then the child does get a badge during that particular project, but you're not grading the end going, oh, how beautiful. Or we have problems where the parents do it at night. They say, oh, I put the kid to bed and I just did it at night because the project was due. This really, gets them into that process is more important than product.
That's so key, Lorraine. And I think it also lets you have different conversations. Like, all right, go back to your notebooks and tell me about a time that you failed and had to try again, or you had a problem in your group work. All of a sudden they have evidence to have like new kinds of conversations in engineering. Like, of course we love the making and the building. I think we're just thinking like now collectively, like how do we have these other kinds of conversations and celebrate other kinds of things, right? Because I definitely have kids in those interviews, we saw kids saying like, oh, I'm not really good at building. I'm not really good at coding. And it's like, okay, those are two parts. Those are two small parts of engineering. There's whole disciplines like chemical engineering and environmental engineering where you don't do very much of either of those. And like these pieces of imagining and drawing and, being able to get your group to consensus are also really important. And we need you. Come. So I love that we're
one of the things I love about EIE and their engineering everywhere and adventures is each one it's about a 6-hour we do camps all summer long, and it is based on a certain type of engineering. So tonight I have 2 teachers are going to be teaching bubble engineering, and it's going to be engineering bubble wands. And that's going to be materials engineering. And later on, we're going to do one about prosthetics, animal prosthetics, and that I find kids get to the end of going, I don't want to be really an engineer, but I really understand this whole career opportunity. I want to be a doctor for this, or maybe I want to be able to go and work with them after the engineers come up with the prosthetics. I would rather work with the animals. So that, to your point, all those other things, I love that. I keep telling the kids, it's like going into a fitting room. Boys don't understand it as much as girls, but going into a fitting room and trying 3 or 4 different outfits and just one that's perfect. I said, when they come to the engineering camps in the summer, you're trying that on. What does that feel like? And just because engineering, electrical engineering felt really good to you, and the next week you're like, oh, I don't really like. So they understand there's so many different ways you can go with it too. And that feeling that you're going to get, this kind of matches me. I kind of like this. Might not just be engineering. It might be a certain type of engineering, but their curriculum really lends itself to doing that.
Cool. I also, as you were talking, I was also thinking just from kids and documenting all that, if you have a journal and you're documenting that, facilitating conversation at the end, saying like, what was your favorite part or what didn't go well is much different than saying, look in your book and trying to find this. I think conversation, it's just, for me, I'd be like, oh, what did I do? I don't even remember. I'm lucky I know this morning. So I think it helps kids with different processing, and just anybody, just you have that record and you can go back and have that conversation about it, about your chemical engineering and all your bubbles and everything like that.
I was just thinking how really so much of that reflection piece is going to also build their own resiliency as learners, whether they become engineers or scientists or teachers or whatever they're doing in their life. And I think that kids right now are suffering so much from, just the stresses, like in Washington State, our schools were closed for 18 months during the pandemic, and they're really having a hard time getting the gains back that they lost. And I don't know if they ever will gain those. There was a lot of improvements in minority and underserved audiences over the last 20 years, but we lost so much, and whatever we could do to support them. And I think giving them that emotional support that, hey, we see what you're doing a great job. What did you learn from this, is going to support them with those journal pieces. So I guess I was thinking journals were important, but after today, I think that they're really going to be also just important to scaffold our kids' learning, and support them in, it's critical thinking skills, but it's also creative thinking. And, I don't know, has anyone started using AI for lesson planning in here, which is something that kids are starting to use in school, but I had to put together a quick lesson plan, and I had bookmarked like 9 different sites of different amazing things. And I opened up the Edge browser and typed in, I'm creating a lesson for 5th graders using this item, and I want them to explore this. And I had a pretty decent lesson plan. It wasn't perfect, but it was something that I could build upon, and I didn't take hours to actually create it. And this is the kids that we're serving right now. They're dealing with technology that we have never had, but also how can we have them think creatively, but also critically? And so I don't know, I'm all over the place on this sentence and this thought, but I think that all of these things are really going to support our learners, especially when they've gone through so much, and to really, I don't know. I just remember how much fun science was as a kid, and I want all the kids to think that way and not think of it as just a school activity or an after school thing that I'm going to leave after an hour or 2 or whatever. So I love all your ideas. And anyway.
I love your passion. That just touched my heart. I want everybody to feel this way. That was awesome, Michelle. And I think I heard from you, which isn't right in what the quick stuff we put together, but definitely one of our values is that social emotional piece, right? Engineering is really emotional. Yeah. When my robot falls off the table, I am upset. And I don't think we always acknowledge that, but I can definitely see this whole community is acknowledging that and saying, like, we know that, and we want to support kids, and that they have big feelings, and then they're going to have to manage those big feelings, but not like trying to put them away, like, don't cry, it's not that bad. Like, no, that robot took me 2 hours to build. I am upset. So I think it's a really great contribution that this cohort of across STEM is making, to say, like, yeah, there's big feelings in STEM.
I couldn't agree more. Say, go ahead, Sandra.
I typed in the chat, but I really appreciate this discussion today. And in the field in general, I'm hearing so much more about developing resiliency, about developing identity, about developing social, emotional skills through STEM, and in particular through engineering. I think that is so important, because I work in after school, and our goal in after school is to help kids develop, not necessarily to prepare them for, well, we want to prepare them for their future, but it goes beyond just the content knowledge that they're going to need for their future. So I really appreciate how it seems to me that these outcomes are more valued than they were 5 years ago. And I am so happy to hear that in the field as a whole.
It makes me really excited for the next generation of STEM professionals. Like, I can't wait to see what's coming. It makes me really happy, especially after I haven't been in this field for so long. All right, well, as much as I hate to wrap up this conversation, I have my eye on the clock. And I just wanted to sort of does anybody have any last comments they want to share, thoughts on how they're going to use this? Any last questions that you thought of for Merredith or Elissa before we wrap up today? All right, Sandra, I think I'm handing it off to you.
Okay.
Thank you so much, everyone. This was fun.
My joy today is sharing, getting a chance to brag a little bit about Becky and the work that she's done on Click to Engineering and where we are. We launched this site in April of last year, so it's still quite new. We've already had almost 4,000 users on our website. That's really exciting. I think our number is about 285 resource downloads, people finding things that they can use in their programming on the website. So we're really excited about sort of those bragging points. And I did want to let you know that if you go to our community of practice page, we do have fall community of practice coming up. That registration isn't up yet, but it will be in the next few days. So keep an eye on this page. We've got the dates and we're getting all of those final plans for September and October fall community of practice. So that is a resource that you can use for yourself or you can share with colleagues. The other exciting thing about our community of practice is we have 13 people that have earned a digital badge for spending 8 hours or more on their professional learning around engineering through the community of practice. So that's kind of exciting too in terms of the numbers and the reach of this project. We're just getting started, but kind of fun to be able to brag about those things. All
And
right.
I'll just echo, we have lots and lots of things in the works that we're not quite ready to announce yet, but lots of great partnerships, more of folks like Merredith and Elissa, more of Merredith. I'm trying to convince her. And so, yeah, so keep your eyes on our page and see what's coming. And of course, you'll get emails from us as well.
And we're going to get together again in July for a conversation like this. Our guest in July will be Christine Cunningham from Youth Engineer Solutions, and she'll be talking about some of the interesting things that are coming up in her work, just like Merredith and Elissa did today. And I really want to thank you both. It's been really great to hear what is happening right now in our field and what we're learning. What are the new ideas that we're thinking about and wrestling? I like being on that cutting edge of growth in our community. So thank you for sharing with us where things are leading you in your work.
All right. We good?
Sorry, I could not unmute. I just wanted to thank you all for having us today. You guys are such an amazing community. We always learn so much when we come here, and it was really great to hear what everyone was doing. And I love Click to Engineering. So many great resources if you haven't checked it out already.
Thank you for inviting me, and it was good to meet everybody.
Yes, we are so glad to have you. Come back anytime. All right, everyone, have a great